yourself. I have got a small exercise as well. So that's what, that's the way I have designed this. So first we will talk about, some of the top companies, and why, Microsoft or the FANG-M, right? So the FANG companies are most sought about. And I'll also give a perspective on what is needed to crack interviews with Google or Microsoft also. I'll touch a bit what they are looking for in terms of the quality and why they are looking for it. And that's what is actually driving them to a much larger scale. I'll give a glimpse of that. Talk about why we took up this topic, right? Art and science. What is art and what is science? I mean, is product management art or science? And then a very small exercise on a product strategy and design exercise. You would have heard this in all FANG companies. The most important word you will hear about in all FANG companies is product strategy and design. What the heck is that, right? So, and a little bit of product management frameworks. And finally, as a concluding note, we all decide, whether it is art or science and why, right? So that's what I have thought about, and will take some time to answer to any of your questions. Anything else is expected out of this session? Haresh, what we wanted to learn about something in specific, please let me know. But these are the topics I have feared, at least in my previous sessions, hey, what are the frameworks? How do you do differently? And what is this product strategy and design you guys are talking about, especially the FANG-M companies, is what I've mostly heard from multiple people. Is that a fair expectation, or you guys have, any one of you have something different to do? Let me know, openly, because I wanted to be very, very clear on the expectation, right? I wanted to be very connected to all of you, rather than me speaking on a slide which doesn't make sense to you.
It covers basic expectations, but when we go into the topics, we can also pick if there are any specific questions.
Perfect. Somebody over? Yeah.
On the Google, let it be an interactive session. That's all I can
Sorry, you can talk here.
Nishant, would you like to say something?
Am I audible?
Okay.
Hey, can I talk? Am I audible? This is Abhishek.
Yes, please, Abhishek.
Hey, thanks for the session, first of all. I was just curious if we have anywhere in this slide talking about, the user research and market research part of product management, because anything else, that would be product design or web UI design, I am able to find courses online which are available where I could learn tools like Figma, but I'm not really, able to find courses which will give me an idea of user research and market research.
Yeah.
So is that something that you are going for? Yeah.
I think I can talk a lot. It's a very close topic. As part of the overall framework, I have touched upon it, but didn't get into the user research, the techniques you use to collect customer feedback, understand the market. I have not got into the details. Maybe I can touch upon it. That's a great point, Abhishek. But I will voice over. I don't have a slide on it, but I can voice over and send some materials maybe post the session. What else?
Yes, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. What else? Anybody else?
Kailash here. Kailash here.
Yeah, yes, please, Kailash.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the session. And from my point of view, I wanted two things to be clear, that if someone is coming from a different background and getting into the PM, and what are the things to be achievable, and the second thing is, what are the products, softwares that we are using as a product manager. And one more important thing is that I heard and I seen that IIIT Hyderabad, which is releasing a new course called Product Design and Management. And if you have any idea regarding that degree, could you please share the views?
Okay, sure. What else? Yeah, I'm noting down all of it. So Kailash, and then the other one was Abhishek, right? Yes, I will cover all of this, even if there aren't slides, and as the follow-up, send you more materials. Yes, these two are noted. What else?
So Harish, I have one more thing.
Yeah.
I think working as a product manager, a lot of times, we are so closely associated to the users, trying to understand the users, trying to understand the customers. But
getting over to, what's the kind of impact it has on the P&L, and particularly working on an enterprise where we have so many layers and only the senior management will have access to all these kinds of information. What's happening on the P&L? How is it changing? What kind of impact? But I think in a way, they're only setting OKRs as goals to work on the next quarter, but we won't have such a keen.
I think that's a good question, but I'm surprised, right? Product managers will have to act as CEOs and say, I can tell you for all my products, I know my P&L.
Okay.
So product managers cannot work without understanding the business side of P&L. If there is a reason why product managers are designed in any company not to know the P&L, I think that's very wrong.
Okay.
At least I could say in Fangam, at least in Microsoft, I can say, definitely, I think we are aware of the P&L, especially the product group. Because as we move along, I will connect some of the dots there, why P&L understanding is important. Okay, I didn't go into the deep dive much into, see, the OKR mapping itself is going to be driven first at a top level from a market, which translates into an org level goal, that translates into a department level goal, right? And then that comes into a specific product level goal. So in Microsoft, so where I come from, if you see, I belong to a department called data and AI. So the data, I think that's the most hottest and the most sought about department. I'm lucky to be there, right? So the data and artificial intelligence is the department, I belong to, which has intelligence platforms, which is where my product comes in. So whatever needs that percolates come from market to the division, department, and then traverses into the product. So unless you know how the OKRs and the overall company's P&L versus your product P&L, some of the priority mapping you cannot do at all. Yeah. So maybe so I'm surprised to hear that product managers are not given access and understanding to deal with P&L. That's a surprise, actually. Anyway, I have a slide and we will talk about it. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. With that, maybe I will get into the session and interim we can talk more. So first, right, top companies. See, I want to set this more like a context. Top companies. I mean, why does it matter much? That's the first context setting I wanted to talk about. And obviously, my request to Isaac is, I'm going to ask some questions just to make it interactive, right? Like a quiz questions. I have a connection slide as well, mostly business oriented. Who is going to answer it right? I couldn't purchase some gifts and come probably if you could make a note and just send them a small amount, I could sponsor as well. So please do that. Okay. So the top companies in the world. Now, when we say top companies, I would say the first measure in any business is the overall valuation, right? You want to sell the company. What is the value? That's the ultimate measure of a company being successful. You could make less revenue, but you are still valued 10x. WhatsApp doesn't matter. What is the valuation at which they were sold at? So that's the biggest thing. What are the top? And then finally is the actual earnings, not the revenues, but the actual earnings, which is the profits. And then the brand value. Very, very important, right? I'm not sure if you guys even would have called me if I'm not from Microsoft, right? So there's definitely a greater brand value. So the question is, market capitalization. Do you know which are the top 3 brands? There are top 10 I'm going to bring out. I mean, without a Google search, do you know who are the top 3 quickly? Have you ever thought about
Apple and Aramco are the top 2.
Fantastic. Who's that?
Barney here.
Okay, can please note it. All right. So let's go, right? So, of course, Apple and Saudi Aramco. So the message I'm trying to communicate in this slide is, let's forget about Aramco. I mean, Saudi Aramco or, Tesla is anyway now in the technology league. Keeping aside, say, United Health or Berkshire Hathaway or TSMC and Saudi Aramco. If you see the top 10 list has top 5, which are all product focused companies, right? You have Apple, number 3 is Microsoft, then you have Google, Amazon, Meta, plus I think Tesla also is no more calling themselves as an automobile company, like how Amazon is, right? Walmart has stopped calling themselves as retail company, but they are calling themselves as technology company. So Tesla is very, very focused way started to call themselves as a technology company rather than an automobile. But still, if you see the top 5 of the biggest valued companies are in the list of the typical FANGM. So let's go by earnings, right? Any guesses which are the top 3 on earnings?
So Microsoft.
No, first is Apple, second is Microsoft, and second is Google, and third is Microsoft, if I'm not wrong. First is Apple because they are the highest in trillion.
Right.
Okay.
That was the case last year. I think Google recently took over us because of a lot of cost cutting. Google, from a P&L perspective, if you have tracked them, they were not doing great on earnings 2 years back, but I think they have picked up and geared up a great momentum. So they just surpassed us, and we are fighting them. I think we would be back in top 3 very soon. We'll have to wait and watch the situation. But yes, you have again got Apple there, right? So there's one thing common. You are having Apple here. You are again having Apple there. Okay, let's go to the brand value, which is the most valued brand in the world.
Apple, obviously. If I'm not.
So straight answer. I don't know who is the first giving the answer. Please give it to them. I mean, I'm not noting the name, Isaac. If you could just note down. Okay. All right. So, of course, in the top 3 brands, global brands as well, 2022, Apple, Google, Microsoft. So, if you again and again see these tech product companies, the FANGM, again and again, in all ways in terms of earning, value, brand, are coming up again and again on the top, right? And the valuation we are talking about, Apple, 2.6 trillion, right? We are not even talking about in billion. 2.6 trillion. It's worth some of the economy sizes even of countries, and that's how they are valued at. So definitely, I think to all of you, that's something special these guys have all done. When I say these people, it's all we all together, right? I think ultimately for them, people have mattered the most. We will get into the ways they have got it done one by one, but I'm not going to get into details of it. But just wanted to say that one of the biggest reasons why this product buzz, product management, product is happening is there are certain things done by these product companies, and these were the pioneers who introduced the concept of product managers and product management, and it has tremendously worked for them, and a lot of people are trying to follow them. I can tell you that recently Walmart started following, because Walmart was a retail company. Why is Walmart coming into product management world? The last decade, I would say the last 10 years after their acquisition and after Walmart Labs coming, is where they started focusing on product management. If you see recently, Citibank or JP Morgan or Visa have all started a product division, and they have started grooming product managers. So everybody who have a very, very wide footprint have started looking for product managers, right? And of course, one of the most sought and paid up profile as well. Why? We will get into that, right? Is it an art or science? I mean, why is this happening? Or is it more a buzz which is not worth it? Is it overhyped like startups of today? We will get that at the end of the session, right? So let's do a small connect exercise. You would have heard about these connections, right? So let me know what you remember the moment, because there's going to be a set of 3 images linking to some connect, and please guess out for the winner. Please give us something good, Isaac.
So maybe simple rules. They have to open their mics, or you have to make them comment on it. So because otherwise it's going to be tough.
No, I think they have to open up. So who is opening up first gets the.
So then let's take that. So whoever opens up their mouths to answer, that is what we're going to say. No comments. We're not looking at comments at all.
Okay, great. So what is that you all see when you look at Atari?
Atari is the first company who made the Pong game, and Steve Jobs was working over there in Atari.
Great. Who's that? Nishant, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How many have known Atari? Because the 80s kids might know Atari. not anybody after 80s, I guess. I've loved Atari for their gaming console, right? So we'll come in. Do you recognize who this is?
Disney. Walt Disney.
Walt Disney.
Okay. What's the? I think I know. So Nishant, you could mute. I think you would have already guessed it, but okay. I think we'll have. So what's the? What's the connect? I mean, what's the connect between all the three?
When Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, he bought Pixar Studios and made the first Toy Story movie.
Okay. So what is the connect? What is the connect I'm trying to say between these three?
These three, he made products like in all three of those.
I think all the three pictures are loved by children.
Right. No, is there so if I want to connect a personality to this three, who would be that?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
Okay, great. Simple answer, right? It's Steve Jobs. Anybody in this room think Apple, anybody in this room think, you don't want to buy an Apple or you don't like an Apple or have you not used an Apple product or no, I could see already everybody here use an Apple laptop, right? So, or anybody in this room as well as in over the phone think Steve Jobs is not a great product manager? Okay, that's unanimous. Now let's go into these entrepreneurs, right? So Steve Jobs, yes, he's one of the most inspirational, aspired product leaders in the world, right? To the right side, you are looking at somebody. Left side is Steve Jobs. Yeah, the center is Elon Musk. Everybody know. To the right side, you are seeing somebody. Do you know who's this?
This is
Edison.
Fantastic. Great. Very knowledgeable people, right? Edison, yes. So why is Edison appearing in the entrepreneurs list? Do everybody know this?
General Electric.
Sorry?
He founded General Electric.
Fantastic.
Founder of General Electric.
Fantastic. So if you see from a background perspective, right? We are talking about art or science. Steve Jobs, he used to be a designer, artist, creative expert, of course, a technician, but not a typical software developer, right? He's more, the whole world will think him as more a creative artist rather than a science-driven personality. But let's take an example of Edison. Of course, GE is a great brand as well. Everywhere from an enterprise angle, multiple missions, but not as successful as maybe if we have to compare that with Steve Jobs. So does it give an impression, maybe product management with more art focus? It's a skill, it's an art, will win over the typical science. Does it give that impression? We will see that. I'm just throwing some questions here and there, but let's come to the latest great entrepreneurs, right? Elon Musk. Do you know that he's an arts graduate plus a science graduate? He's an arts graduate in physics and a science graduate in economics. Now the question is, why in US physics is under arts and why in India physics is under BSc science? So any which ways, we will come to that again in the next slides. So essentially, you have got one of the great entrepreneurs, product leaders. Edison is a great product leader as well. He's a scientist. He has designed a lot of products, but not software driven. He's a scientist. And you have got Musk, who's a combination of both, I would say. If you see his first entrepreneurial venture, he was not doing anything on the rocket science at all. His internship was on rocket science with a startup. Then he landed up doing a mobile app. It's more a intercity guide, which has nothing to do with rocket science. Then he came into automobiles, which has again nothing to do with rocket science. And his share prices went skyrocketing after SpaceX, right? The vision of what he wants to finally end up in his destiny, which is like a multi-trillion dollar market. So if you see all of them, there isn't a common trend that sets, only artists or scientists or a combination can only be great product leaders or bigger entrepreneurs. That's the only message here. Let's get into a little more, right? Does anybody recognize what is this? And who's this man?
This is Steve Wozniak, the
Okay,
first
great.
Apple one. The first Apple one is somewhat. Yes, the first Apple.
Okay, this is great. Okay, I think I should have prepared a bit of connections a little more tough. I did validate this with my wife and she said it's all good. But I think next time we'll have to make it tough. Yes. This is the co-founder of Apple. He is actually the stronger technologist than Steve Jobs. And they both were a reason to form Apple. But, a lot of people do not know him, Steve. So if I have to compare Steve with, Steve Jobs, I'm sorry, there's two Steves. So one of them is more a design art focused guy. The other one is more a science focused guy, right? So that itself is a terrific combination. Anyway, so what is the difference between art and science? What is that we are talking about? Everybody can do product management. Everybody think product managers are guys who talk well. They're communicators. As long as you communicate and talk well, guys, you can crack an interview. You can make great products. Have you seen people saying this, hey, I wanted to make this, prepare and do it? Is product management that simple? Or is it really tough? We are going to do an exercise and that will tell you what it is finally, right? So what is an art? I think an art is a clear expression of a creative skill. And it's more an imagination, right? Physics a lot of times is an imagination in older days. That's one of the reasons earlier it was part of arts. Because there are a lot of imaginatory things. Time machine is part of physics, right? So why would it be science? It's more an imagination and creativity. Time machine itself is. So I think that's one of the reasons a lot of top tech Wharton's kind of schools have physics under arts. Our universities thought more it to be a science. So the overlap between art and science have long existed. It's not specific to product management alone. That's what I'm trying to make it as a point, because from a science perspective, it is more facts, truths, things that are measurable. But from an art perspective, there are some innate qualities required, right? Not everybody can do it. There are specialist qualities. I think identifying those become very important. The same thing applies in product world as well. So that's why we're talking about this. Now let's talk, get into an actual exercise, right? So, okay, Haresh, this is all too theoretical. Yes, we understand this. Let's do this exercise and then I'll go into the actual part of the frameworks and what we are trying to achieve it. So far, all good. Any questions? All right. So let's get into a small exercise and spend about 15 minutes. There's nothing wrong or right. This is a typical situation you end up in a lot of FANG companies. May not be exactly this. Even if you are taking up an interview, this is the kind of questions that will come up. But I would correlate this more into a business situation. I just framed this. Post-COVID, of course, all top companies. This is the same situation with Google. This situation existed with Microsoft. This situation existed with Amazon. The same situation existed with Apple as well. I'm not talking about something theoretical, but I know this is happening in all the companies, right? So let's get into a product strategy and design exercise. I know what all these companies have done it from a healthcare perspective. So how many product managers are there in this call? Are there product managers or all BAs? Okay. Okay. So let's take three to 4 minutes, right? Think about this problem. The problem is very clear. There's now significant awareness about healthcare needs and spendings are rising. The executive leadership is ready to sponsor money to invest in products to build, something which will be disruptive. Not immediately. Of course, product companies have a lot of patience, but that can transform healthcare in the next decade or in 2 decades, right? Completely. And there are initiatives going on. We will talk about those initiatives. We'll come down the line. As product manager or as BAs, right? Of course, BAs also can move the next ladder to product manager. As a product manager, what would you suggest? Can you define a product strategy and talk in detail about one of the product designs as part of the strategy? Think over, make some trial attempts. We'll see how the thought process is, and then I'll get into the next part of where we are getting it. I think there's a chat as well. Somebody is pinging.
Because maybe it is old.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Any guesses? And these are typical regular questions in any of the FANGM companies as well, to be honest, right? So you want to, I mean, this is a typical question. Now, this is more about the thought process, right? There's nothing wrong or right. When something is put forward like you, what does a product manager's thought process look like? Because we are talking about creative side, art, we are talking about science. Where does the science in dealing this question comes up with? Where is the art? That's what I'm trying to arrive at. I'll show you what. Not at a deep level because we had less time, but because it's if we get into the details, it's more like a workshop for half a day, right? But I'll tell you what it is. But any thoughts? What do you think is driving? You could do a Google search, try anything. What's the first question you will ask?
What kind of product is more applicable from a healthcare perspective that we could roll to customers?
Okay. Would that be a question to, yeah, that's a great point, Nishant. So would that be a question to the board? Because the board will say that, hey, you are the product manager, right? I'm ready to spend about 100 million. And we are talking about companies and money in this space invested in billions, not even like few millions. Hey, I think you could go for $1 billion spend or 100 million spend. Tell me what should be the strategy and design. That's what will be the question back to us as product managers. Because ideally, you know, I can tell you product managers work like CEOs. I mean, there's a separate slide I have. Typically, in all the top successful product companies, at least product managers work like CEOs. You know, I know PayPal calls their product managers as, I think, mini CEOs or something like that. Google or Microsoft or not sure about Amazon, but I know for sure in Meta, I think product managers are typically working like CEOs. So the board will immediately ask back, what would be your strategy? Healthcare is a very wide thing, right? See, I'll take some cues, right? Healthcare is very wide. Product managers most often will deal with a lot of subjective situations. That's one of the biggest problems because we will deal with a lot of senior management leaders. We will be dealing with a lot of subjective topics. I think like a CEO, it will become our responsibility to go and strategize, narrow down, prioritize, and say, I think this is how it looks like. That's a cue. So,
sorry, and I just wanted to take a stab at it. So, I mean, if I were in this position, right, would it be appropriate to start looking at the need itself? Meaning, is there even a space that currently exists for me to venture into it? And if there is one, then the next question would be like, which narrow area should I focus on? Like you mentioned, the healthcare itself could be quite huge. So basically, I'm looking at the opportunity sizing itself, narrow down a particular area, and then look at the opportunity within that particular space, and then see who are the niche players in there, and see if there's even an opportunity available for me before I proceed to the next step.
That's a great point. I think opportunity size is one great word used in product world. That's a great point. The rest, honestly, rather than the rest of the words capturing the attention, the opportunity size is a great word. But where does the opportunity come from, Sriram? How would you guess that?
From the market analysis.
Sorry?
From the market analysis.
Market analysis on like what?
Is there any existing product companies or leveraging this design? So if there is any, we can analyze through the market and we can give the products as more higher than them.
Right. So I think yeah, we will come to that as we talk about a later framework. Why it's a great point for sure. But I think when you compare what others are doing, it becomes a comparison. It becomes a competitive threat sometimes, right? So when you evaluate, when you have opportunities, there is an opportunity evaluation framework. I will suggest it's all known to you, but we will connect to this strategic case to that framework, and you will get this. But great point. Anybody else want to take a stab?
Yeah. So just another thought on this. I'm sorry if someone else wants to speak. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hey, sorry for interrupting. I would maybe take it in a way that I will be looking at the existing product that the company already has, and I would look at the user research.
Great.
Yes, and with the user research, the quickest way will be to leverage the existing product to acquire that space of market.
Okay, existing the board says no products. So Microsoft, Google, everybody, they don't have great healthcare products at all, except for the last 5 years or so. You know them, right? They don't have any major healthcare products. But recently they are developing a lot. I'll give you examples and you will say that, yeah, of course, yes. So what would you do in that case? But one thing very rightly said is the core competency, right? What is the core competency of Google versus Microsoft versus Apple versus a Meta or an Amazon to take the next step is very important. I think understanding the opportunity size, the core competency are very, very important. You will see the exact words, coming up in later part of the slides, and it is widely used in product world. But there is something else more and more used before all of this.
Is it the feasibility? Because already they are pioneers in their own regard. So with any feasibility, Google have data. With the data, they can scale up with the next set of planning, right? So in that way, like every company can do it, right?
Definitely it is there, but that's not the first word.
I think research, Harish.
Research on what?
Okay.
So what are the shortcomings? What are the shortcomings as of today?
I think here Vizag got it right. The first point is signal on the problems, right? And framing the problem rightly. I'll give you an example. I have a slide for a US market. I didn't want to redo. I had already something, and then so I thought I'll give it as an example. I think the first point is the problem framing and the understanding of the problem. Any user research you will do, any technique you use is first to understand the signal about the problem. So problem framing is the first word any of us use as product managers. I've seen this being used in all companies, whether it is interviews or inside the company. The first thing is, hey, what's the problem, right? So only then comes what is the core competency. There's a framework. We will talk about it, how it starts. So, if you typically search Google, a lot of theoretical things are there. I've tried to connect a lot of theoretical stuff into more practical realities as we see some of the frameworks. So yeah, of course, that's where they start ideation. The first thing is problem framing and opportunity identification. So you define a problem. There are multiple problems. Then it becomes multiple opportunities. Which of those opportunities will you be evaluating? So which of the framework will you choose for opportunity evaluation? What are the techniques you will choose for user research to define and size the problem? And so on. There are a lot of steps, right? So we'll go one by one. So let's talk in this particular example. This is something happening in US and everybody are into it. I know healthcare pretty well. And then, so I can tell you this topic of value-based care, pop health data management. Google is into it. Amazon is into it. Microsoft is into it. Apple is into it. Salesforce is into it. Why? Everybody are into it. Why? Because it's one of the, I mean, this is only specific to US. In the frameworks we are coming, we will also come into how do you segment products? How do you segment market? How do you segment customers? Product, market, customers. There are three things you have to segment, right? So one of the first things is when you look for problems, which is the segment you're looking at, right? So, the first thing itself will lead to a lot of clarifying questions, which essentially is, hey, Microsoft, Google, for everybody, I don't even want to ask this as a question, because for all of them, which is the top companies we are talking about, the highest revenue, the highest profit is coming from which of the market? US. So there is no rocket science to decide they have to start with US. It could be different for few others. Let's take an example of Paytm. They want to do something. They cannot go into US because their market is not US. And their core competency is not US, right? So first, understanding the market and the customer segment is very important. Now, this slide talks first about the market segment. So clearly US, what's happening? In US, there's a transformation happening on value-based care. Forget about the word value-based care. What's the problem? Fundamentally, there is a cost problem, plus there is a health outcome problem. The chronic disease rate is the highest in US. Obesity is the highest in US. And I'm comparing this only to the developed nations, not to the underdeveloped nations. Let's not do that because that will skew the sampling altogether, right? So you have to compare US, we have to compare with the health of Europe, Japan, and the developed OECD nations, right? So if you compare the OECD nations, US has got the lowest average. European nations plus, Japan into this maybe. Obesity, chronic disease rate, suicide rates, average physician visits a month. I mean, if you compare this with India, maybe it could be a much different equation, but the highest spender in US for healthcare is the government because they provide insurance for people, those who don't have jobs, people, those who are above 60 years, people, those who have worked in army, which insurance companies don't give it. They're the highest spend. So there's a very clear defined problem for all the companies to leverage upon is, and there is a government motivation is, there's a health outcome problem. COVID came up, the cost of government, the cost of insurance companies, everybody have gone crazy. Huge spend. Everybody are on a loss, right? United Health went into a deep loss. For them to recover took some time after COVID. So the biggest motivation for all of them, including government, because government is the 33% contributor, sorry, I think 45% contributor of the overall national health expenditure, is that we wanted to fix this problem. Okay, now US, there's a health outcome plus a cost problem. What would be the next question? And the next question as a product manager would be, which of these areas, healthcare again has a lot of things, right? There is emergency care, there is chronic care, there is, prenatal care, there is cancer care. I think the highest spend again is going as part of chronic diseases. COVID is not in any of these categories, but it is also, when COVID is recognized, of course, the condition is serious. It is not defined into a chronic category. We'll keep COVID aside. But more than COVID deaths, the deaths because of cancer, diabetes, heart diseases, and pulmonary disorders, which are the top 4 chronic disease categories, are the highest. So COVID has given only the awareness. Because COVID has come, if as product manager, we straight away start addressing the COVID problem to design a product, it doesn't make sense. Because there is a larger area from a business perspective, as well as from a healthcare outcome perspective, which is even larger in hand, already existed. COVID just has created an extra awareness, which is the chronic disease. That's the highest area of spend in US. So if you see what people are doing, they have all moved from a reactive to a proactive care, because diabetes or heart disease, prevention is better than cure, right? So Obviously, let's take a simple example. You go to a doctor after recognizing with a heart block. How much does an angio cost? Several lakhs. If you go to a doctor on every year, do your health check, what happens? I think the cost is significantly low as comparatively, and it improves your health outcome as well. So a wide range of technology devices, softwares, integrations are today built in US to enable this proactive care management. And even Apollo, if you go to Apollo, I think I see this buzzword, proactive care, proactive care. And that's going to be the buzzword after COVID. So anything to do proactive care, there are a lot of companies. In India, we'll take an example, right? Healthify. Everyone know Healthify? I think I see 3 people nodding in the room. So I assume that at least half know Healthify. The biggest thing which Apple and, sorry, yeah.
No, nothing. Sorry.
Yeah. The biggest thing which Apple and Google are betting, and I know a lot of people in Google's team on health. The biggest thing they're betting both on devices to predict diseases faster. Very importantly, they're spending on watches. You would have seen Apple Watch introducing the ECG facility and doing a big buzz in the market, right? So Apple and Google are very closely working. Of course, Apple is a different game because they manufacture as well as they have the software. Google is working with Samsung and a lot of other manufacturers because they are the Android OS to ensure a lot of new devices are embedded. I'm not sure how many of you know you could measure in your phone's respiratory rate. The devices, the latest devices, if you are a top-end mobile, it supports. Respiratory rate is measurable. Not many know, right? You could measure a heartbeat. They're introducing new things. They're exploring on if ECG could be monitored in a mobile. If not in mobile, how about in watch? How could I use that data? That data getting integrated to physician systems is an active effort. You could see Apple integrating with Epic, Athena Health. There's a very active conversation that's happening. That's the biggest health market and the kind of product management they have got into to address and get into proactive care. Again, proactive care can get into subcategories, which will have multiple product managers. So that's where I said there's a lot. It cannot be just theoretically dealt. Even there is creative brain and an art to it. You need a structure and a scientific way to approach it, which is where something called comes as frameworks. Because whatever I said itself has multiple things. We will keep talking theories. Nothing will get into execution. Artistically, creatively, we can talk. But what all of the FANG companies have done is execution. To precisely identify the areas and get it done. How is that possible? That's where the science of it comes. The science of it comes in terms of frameworks, proven frameworks implemented by all of them, facts driven. So say, for example, when we talk about, again, I think we are short of time, right? I'll quickly run through and take a pause, send this deck, and we will do a wider exercise. You know, we can get into a specific workshop if more time has been there. But in general, that's where the science comes in. So the golden circle is one of the predominant frameworks I use, many use in the product world to define why first, not get into the how and what. So one of the members in here were talking about the feasibility, right? The feasibility comes later. The why, and then you get into the how of whether it is feasible. That's the second step. The first step is just to understand the problem. And then getting into the what is actually, say, Apollo is also fixing this problem as a service hospitality provider. Apple is also doing it as a technology provider. Salesforce is doing it as an enterprise software provider. So the way different people do and address this problem is different. Now that comes into your way of core competency and competitive edge. How do you? Now you need to answer the questions of why, how, what, and of course the who as well, to understand where you want to go about. That will give you an understanding of which way to go about. Let's say if Apple comes and says, yeah, I want to transform this and I'm going to float hospitals. Does it make sense? Amazon has done that. Amazon is floating Amazon Care. Just Google for Amazon. Amazon has gone into that model. Why? They had a capability there. Again, I have less time to talk over all of those. And if you use a 5 why and get into the deeper why, when the first question of strategy comes, why are they looking for it? Probably the answer would be probably there are problems which are not today solved. They're trying to solve. Why are there problems which are not solved? What is that we are talking about? Maybe predictive capabilities are less. Why are the predictive capabilities less? If you get into the 5 why, you will have all answers. And if you sort them in order, sometimes the 5 whys will not get in order at the first stretch. And if you put them in order, you will get a beautiful way of looking at the why. I mean, we have done it many, many times. And very, very importantly, product managers are strong in number crunching, strong in measuring outcomes. You are not a product manager if you are able to clearly measure outcomes and goals, both from a technical perspective and from a functional. Technical is very, very important for bigger companies, especially because of the scale. You might be functionally superior, and if it fails, let's take Z versus Netflix, Z5 versus Netflix, which do you think is giving you the better experience? Netflix, right? Of course, functionally, it's the same, but the performance and the delivery technically is amazing in Netflix. Number one, right? Even Amazon Prime is next. They're competing. So similarly, I think, so what are those for your products? Technical and functional parameters is very important. If you define it all, is one way of defining product strategy. And let's say when you are left out with options, Haresh, all this is fine. But you know, this way, there is a left way, there is a right way. See, Salesforce invested in something. Microsoft is closely investing in the same way as Salesforce to this problem. But Amazon or Google are investing in something else of watches and devices, which is a different problem. So why don't Samsung also consider this? Of course, Samsung is also doing this. So which way, why didn't Microsoft go into the devices route? Microsoft used to be one of the leaders sometime back in devices. Why have they given up that? I think the core competencies, that's where it comes. What's your strength? What's your weakness? Very importantly, what's the threat from a competitor and a market? Evaluating all this will actually put you into a right prioritization way, so that you leverage more on your strengths, mitigate on your weakness and the threats by delivering, by focusing on an opportunity area. Specific examples, you could just take a pen and paper and sort it for yourself and write it down. It'll beautifully come out. The other model is the 5 force model. Obviously, you could try both, mapping it. It works. Now, let's get into the segmentation, right? Which market, how do we segment customers, products, market? Product and customer segmentation strategy as a whole, usually the Ansoff grid works. A lot of people do not know this name is Ansoff even, but we all follow this together in product world very often. Hey, are we going for a diversification? Are we going for a product expansion or a market expansion? A lot of people have even forgot the name of Ansoff. We have started using this many, many times holistically. And the customer segmentation, we correlate this between the customer demographic segmentation in terms of classifying them as Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and baby boomers, and of course the builders later. The younger ones are called the alphas. We do this very often because they have got a very standard behavior together as a group, to a very correlative sense of how the adoption is. You design a new product, we cannot expect it to be adopted immediately. So there is a framework for it to understand what will be the initial, because the first question your board will ask you is from a design. This is all more from a design also. Okay, great, Haresh, you're going to deal with a $5 billion market. Tell me, what is the investment you want for the first year? This will be the first question coming to the product managers, right? We have to put a business case. How would you know that unless you know what is adoption? What is the framework you'll use? You're going to map a mathematical number, calculate this is the assumption, this is the segment, this is the adoption rate. I'm going to mark a percentage of error into this. So this is what is the budget I'm looking for. If you give me this, I'll achieve this target, right? Because the next time you have to achieve this at least 80%, otherwise they are not going to rely you next time as product manager. So these frameworks help a lot to define those. And these are not arts, right? These are typical science. Now, 7Ps is another thing, I'll close this through. And ultimately what we are overall talking about is, you could still map a why, how, what into the theoretical things you would have seen in the internet, right? Problem framing and identification. And then there is an ideation and design and prototype, and then develop and deploy. What does it mean? You are defining the why clearly. I think somebody asked a question on the user research and techniques. Bigger companies have a lot of, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So essentially, the bigger companies have something called a mechanism called voice of customer, an enterprise voice plus a voice of customer. If you have seen these bigger companies, including my product, we have clear communities. We look for signals in communities based on the customer target segments. And we collate that feedback regularly. Because they are the exact target segments, you collate feedback from communities. And of course, because there is an existing customer base, and the case we have taken up is the bigger companies, you have voice of customers. You can send a survey, and this is a typical voice of customer exercise. That's what it is called as. You can get feedback. Very importantly, you can do focused interviews. And more importantly, the analysts, because their business is to talk to a lot of customers. They will collate. And if you pick up a analyst in Class and Forrester, Class does this for healthcare. They have detailed reports. You just need to talk to them to understand who gave this, what's the problem, what's the priority area. They have a ton of information. So when we spoke about user research, right? The secondary research, Google research is pretty, everybody can do it. But specifically focusing on your segment, where your segmented audience are spending their maximum time to talk something, is the right place for your user research. And from a technique perspective, I think it depends upon the companies. The typical technique followed is a focused interview or voice of customer surveys taken on a regular basis, because surveys are not usually liked by all customers, right? The way voice of customer is done is a little different way. It's not a typical survey. It provides a weightage. I can share some examples of how it is done in product companies. It's not a typical survey where something is talking and you do it. There's a modeling about it. And if you search for voice of customer tools, there are specific software for this. Most of the big companies have all these softwares proprietary to them. They have these tools. I think there was another question on what are all the product management tools. There need to be tools for customer listening. It's a wide variety of set, right? There are specific tools for customer listening. There are tools for product execution. But most of the top companies use their own tools. Say, for example, instead of Jira in Microsoft, we use Azure DevOps, which is a very equivalent of Jira. Google uses their own, right? I'm not sure about Apple, but I think Google, Microsoft use their own. So the implementation, again, everybody have their own tools. There isn't any specific set of tools which we can claim, in my opinion, as the best. Of course, Jira is great because their business is primarily that. But what is more important, in my opinion, I think, apart from the science part of which tool it is, it's also very important to understand the basics and the thematic part of it. So a perfect balance of using a tool versus the conceptual structure of it, I think will only bring in the outcome, right? So and finally you get into a actual what. So the what is the execution, which is where your epics, stories, feature come in from an execution methodology tools perspective. Designing, you have separate tools. So yeah. So in essence, as a closing note, right? I feel product management versus application management, Thoughtworks or Accenture or TCS Infosys. I've always asked this question. Why have some of the great companies like Thoughtworks, Accenture, not gotten deep into the product, right? I think my sincere request for every one of you to think about is more think on these angles, because there's a very close correlation between what BAs and product managers in consulting companies are doing with the FANG companies, which is, in my opinion, I think product management is more about designing product platforms, leveraging technology that would cater to a common need for a wider segment of customers across industry. So if you take any of our products, I'll talk about, say, 10,000 customers, 1,000 customers. So a single product, but there are multiple. Versus application is specific to a particular segment. But this is one of the reasons Walmart or Amazon have got into the product world, because for them it is a scale. Walmart is in multiple markets. Many of these customers have developed specific applications for different geographies, city, visa. Later it has become a big problem. Every geo, let's say Amazon has an e-commerce platform in US and they come to India. They have to develop a new code. Does it make sense? Or they develop their own proprietary e-commerce platform, which is configurable, which is product centric, not application centric to one business. So they can go to any market and keep customizing that and building it as a product. Which one is better? That's exactly why Amazon built a product division when they had an e-commerce, right? So that is the importance of product management. I think as long as product managers can think big, creative, disruptively, addressing to wider need of customers in the entire industry or market, not specific to one customers, I think you are great product managers. And of course, the ability to measure outcomes and reiterate and improve with a very structured approach to define is very important if we have to execute it rightly, which is where the frameworks and the science part of it comes. So I think it's a combination of both. There was also a question, product managers are not involved in P&L. I'm very surprised. All product managers are involved in all these 4 activities. Otherwise, you are not a real product manager, I would say, in a typical Fangam world at least. You have to be in touch with R&D and the engineering stakeholders. You have to be in touch with the designers from an artistic user experience perspective, collating user feedback. To collate user feedback itself, there are tools, amplitude. What does a user do at a screen level, right? Plus the user experience design, that's a separate art itself together. Plus stakeholder management, which includes finance, leadership, business cases, and of course, listening, analysts, markets, customers. I think all of this together, product managers are mini CEOs in my opinion. One last slide, this is the last slide. So Google, PayPal, Salesforce, all are great companies. But Google's revenue is 278, PayPal is 26 and 29. Salesforce's year founded is almost the same. They're all great. What is different with Google? This is what I was looking at. The first and foremost thing looked at product managers is problem framing and opportunity identification. Because Google product managers have defined a very wide problem. And the size of the problem they are defined is much, much larger. When they took up, they defined search. If you center around all their products is around search. Because of Google Chrome, their search increased. Right? So they have centered a problem in a different way. I think that's where they got it to $278 billion from 1998. Though Microsoft or even Apple have been there from 1976, I think Google have got it very right that way, right? The only thing I feel Microsoft would have been much, much better is we lost on the devices market. If we get a tough bet to Google on the devices market, I think we would have been double of Google very easily, right? We missed out that. We made some mistakes, Nokia, Symbian and all this. So I think that's where the definition of problem and framing is very, very important. I think we overshot. Sorry about it if somebody wanted to log off already. But any questions, please let me know. I think we should have maybe had a 1.5 2 hour session, just too short to cover it all. Any questions? I can spend another 10 to 15 minutes easily because we had a lot of different questions and angles coming to this, and nothing is a straight, immediate, single line answer. wanted to cover it all. I'll send this deck to all. You could circulate it, maybe Isaac. Sure. Yeah. Any questions?
Hey Harish, thank you for the session. I just wanted to ask if, I mean, related to project management role towards engineering and technology and user experience, how much part, basically, what kind of work in these two things a product manager has to
That's a
do?
great, yeah, that's a very good question, right? Actually, there was also another question earlier asked, people from different roles moving into product management, how would we do it, right? If you typically see Microsoft, a lot of people from engineering who have been architects do become product managers, because Microsoft is more technology centric, enterprise focused product management company. If you see Apple, most of the user experience designers are product managers. Apple is more about UI design and everything, right? In my opinion, right? And Amazon has a lot of MBAs as product managers. Different people have defined it in a different way. Google is a mix of all. They have technology guys, of course, MBAs. They're doing a mix, but recently I think they're following an Amazon model with more MBAs. So I think it is not about, in my opinion, it is not about the quality of whether somebody is from engineering or somebody is from user experience. In my opinion, that doesn't define somebody is a good product manager or not. What defines somebody is a very good product manager or not is his ability to frame problems very rightly, understanding a user, and ability to understand business, to size the problem and translate it into a very, very scalable, big time vision. I think if that quality is available with any technology person or a user experience, they will become a good product manager. Just for the sake of by paper, becoming product management, coming into this, I've seen some people struggle into this. They come in, then their growth becomes a little tough. Then they go back sometimes, or still some stay because they like the tag of product manager, right? It's a very prestigious tag nowadays, at least considered. I think, product managers, we all used to say, we all want to be very humble. Anybody can be good product managers. In my experience, I have seen people with the top class, tier one, of course, a lot of, I'm talking about IITs, IIMs, everybody, versus there are a few intern grads who come and show great skill. We have seen this from other colleges, Vellore, SRM or others. So I think the product world has transformed. To be honest, I can say, at least in my teams, when I hire, we look for the actual quality. We recently were even doing and hiring both in IIM and IIT, as well as Vellore and SRM. But I think we look for that specific quality to get into the product, because even in IIMs and IITs, I think the top companies sought is product companies. So we look for that quality during the hiring, rather than having a tag behind that person as, okay, he is technology, he is user experience, he didn't have that experience. We don't do that tagging based on experience or the older. We look for that quality. But the only problem is that quality comes with some experience also sometimes. So I'll give you this as an example, right? So let's take an artist who draws. If I ask an artist to draw my face, that is his own skill. But that skill has not come to him just like that by birth. He has practiced it. Similarly, I ask him to draw a dinosaur. If I draw versus he draws, he knows where is the right point. He will first pick it on the tail, finish the leg, and then come to the head. We do it the other way, do it wrong. So there is a structural approach he has learned. So that, I think, will be there if at least basic product management skills are practiced. So there was one other question. Hey, what do we do about the IIT, triple IT product management course or something, right? I actually don't believe in courses. We don't give too much weightage into this, honestly speaking, when we interview. I think, but there is definitely learning. But if you wanted to implement something in Thoughtworks, build products, there is definitely a learning into this. But I would say that is only 20%. If you really wanted to be a good product manager, I would say get your hands dirty and design a product, right? So apart from Microsoft, I have my own entrepreneurial background of defining apps. I have my own revenues coming from somewhere else. So the actual product understanding and observation comes when you form a team, try to do something bizarre, develop an app, understand consumer user experience, why customer adopted, what is that you did as a mistake. I think 1 or 2 of those skills are great. Sometimes, some of these interns do that. They have tried that. If you see a lot of recruits, Microsoft, Google, some very young guys who have done that are given like super amazing packages and picked up is for that reason, because it's a skill, right? So that skill sometimes comes with the experience, sometimes comes with the effort, sometimes comes with your passion and interest. It will not come by paper just doing the role, is my view on it. Yeah, I think there's one more question. How important is it to have an MBA? I don't think it is, at least in Microsoft or Apple, I can say it is not very important. In Google also, I know for sure it is not very important. But Amazon, yes, it's very important. I don't think it's easy to crack a product manager offer in Amazon if you are not an MBA. I'm an MBA as well. I have an advanced raw school of management program degree as well. But I would honestly say, MBA is more towards entrepreneurship. You use your MBA skills only in entrepreneurship. But I think product management is a little different world. So I don't believe only MBAs can do good product management is something I don't believe in. Yeah.
I think it all boils down to the mindset that we are.
That's right.
I think.
See, again, that's what some people are artists by nature, some people are not. Yeah, I think we have too much overshooter on time, I guess. So I'll take a pause now.
Yeah, maybe if you guys have any more questions, maybe put it in the chat and we'll try to answer. Or
I'll answer it later also if required and send some materials.
You can also post it in the meetup group and we'll get it answered from Haresh and we'll put the responses there as well.
Oh, meetup group would be difficult, I know. Maybe I'll.
I'll
okay, you will.
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
Please give your feedback. We've just sent you the feedback forms. Okay.
Yeah, maybe if you can open and quickly fill that up, that will be great. Maybe even after leaving this call. Cool. So while you do that, I think we wanted to thank you so much, Haresh, I think for spending so much time with us. I think that there were some insightful information. I think how you connected the healthcare problem with all the products that came through, right? I think that was very interesting for me. Because I started thinking about Apple Watches and the watch itself, but then how you gave the journey, right? I think that was very interesting for me. I saw how that all connected when you're explaining. So this was very, very insightful. And there were also other frameworks and stuff that you tried to scratch on the surface. But I think we'll all go refer to the text and then see how this is going to help us. We'll read about it a little. So yeah, I think thank you so much for spending time. Thank you for coming over, first of all. I think that was so nice of you.
No, I think you will have to thank my wife, right, Gayatri, who's your reason OP. Yeah, because I think if your wife says you cannot say no, right? So that's the primary factor. And of course, I had a personal motivation also. The number of product managers in Chennai are very less.
Yeah.
As we recruit also, the number of product managers in India and the people with their skills in Chennai are very scarce. So personally, I was taking an interest. If it is Chennai, I can do something to the product community.
Yes.
I'm more than happy to contribute.
Yeah. And it is great to hear from you. Like you also wanted to contribute back to the committee. So same is what Thoughtworks thinks as well. So it is wonderful.
I think you guys also should take it probably as a motivation action. Take it to your leadership to why is Thoughtworks not developing products, right? You could ask that. I asked this question. You have a lot of brilliant brains, smart brains as BAs. Why are you not getting into products?
Should ask this question. Cool.
Okay. Right.
All right. So if the folks don't have any more. All right. Thank you, folks. I think thank you for staying along. I think we shot up by 20 minutes. We also started late, but that's that. We also want to thank you so much for staying long and supporting us. Next, the BizKnight invite.
Hey, you are muted.
Vaishak, we can't hear you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.